China is facing a serious oil crisis. According to the CPC, China's oil reserves will last only 40 to 50 days. At the same time, China remains the second largest consumer of oil in the world after the United States and the largest importer. Growing tensions with other countries have China worried about oil imports. Even ally Russia cannot fully meet China's vast needs. As Xi Jinping becomes more aggressive on Taiwan and the South China Sea, the possibility that other countries could block Chinese oil imports is growing. This is a scenario that the CCP simply cannot afford, as without oil, the economy will collapse. China is ramping up its oil imports. In August, China bought more than 1 million barrels per day, nearly double the amount it bought in February. Russia has become China's biggest oil supplier, with crude imports from there rising 55% to a record high. 1.4 billion Chinese need oil. Their warships need oil. Their factories need oil. The question is, where will that oil come from? China is already tapping its strategic oil reserves that are earmarked for times of scarcity or war. This is an unprecedented move for China. To understand China's current oil problems and why it can't afford war, we need to start with the country's history. As in many stories about China, it all starts with its incredible economic growth over the past 2 decades. China has gone from a third-world country to a global superpower second only to the United States. This growth has turned China into a manufacturing superpower that produces anything. However, this growth has led to resource depletion. China used to be more than capable of meeting its domestic oil needs. The country had numerous oil fields and wells that provided everything it needed and more. But that changed at the turn of the century when China began to ramp up production and the country experienced its own industrial revolution. Despite the presence of large oil fields, China's annual demand for oil began to exceed annual supply due to excessive domestic demand from the manufacturing sector. In 1993, China produced only 1.2 billion barrels of oil, while domestic demand was almost 1.7 billion barrels. This led to China becoming a net importer of oil. Today, China relies heavily on oil to power its fleet of more than 250 million vehicles, as well as to sustain its enormous manufacturing industry. The PRC now imports more than 75% of its oil from other countries, especially Africa, the Middle East, Canada, and South America. China is now the world's largest importer of oil and gas. China's economy is highly dependent on oil, and China cannot survive without oil imports. Just a few years ago, it was rumored that China's oil reserves would last the country only 80 days. In comparison, the US oil reserves are enough to meet the country's needs for almost 5 years. This means that China is heavily, very heavily, dependent on oil imports. Thank you for watching this video. If you like the content, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It will help a lot in development. I wish you all the best and see you soon.